双语音标领航，注音阅读启蒙，叶兴阳有声读物。
Hans Brinker, or The Silver Skates, by Mary Mapes Dodge. To my father James J. Mapes, this book is dedicated in gratitude and love. Preface. This little work aims to combine the instructive features of a book of travels with the interest of a domestic tale. Throughout its pages, the descriptions of Dutch localities, customs, and general characteristics have been given with scrupulous care. Many of its incidents are drawn from life, and the story of Raf Brinker is founded strictly upon fact. While acknowledging my obligations to many well-known writers on Dutch history, literature, and art, I turn with especial gratitude to those kind Holland friends who, with generous zeal, have taken many a backward glance at their country for my sake, seeing it as it looked 20 years ago, when the Brinker home stood unnoticed in sunlight and shadow. Should this simple narrative serve to give my young readers a just idea of Holland and its resources, or present true pictures of its inhabitants and their everyday life, or free them from certain current prejudices concerning that noble and enterprising people, the leading desire in writing it will have been satisfied. Should it cause even one heart to feel a deeper trust in God's goodness and love, or aid any in weaving a life, wherein, through knots and entanglements, the golden thread shall never be tarnished or broken, the prayer with which it was begun and ended will have been answered. M.D. A letter from Holland.
Amsterdam.
July 30, 1873. Dear boys and girls at home, if you all could be here with me today, what fine times we might have walking through this beautiful Dutch city. How we should stare at the crooked houses, standing with their gable ends to the street, at the little slanting mirrors fastened outside of the windows, at the wooden shoes and dog carts nearby, the windmills in the distance, at the great warehouses, at the canals, doing the double duty of streets and rivers, and at the singular mingling of trees and masts to be seen in every direction.
Ah,
it would be pleasant, indeed. But here I sit in a great hotel looking out upon all these things, knowing quite well that not even the spirit of the Dutch, which seems able to accomplish anything, can bring you, at this moment, across the moment. There is one comfort, however. In going through these wonderful Holland towns without you, it would be dreadful to have any of the party tumble into the canals. And then these lumbering Dutch wagons, with their heavy wheels, so very far apart. What should I do if a few dozen of you were to fall under them? And, perhaps, one of the wildest of my boys might harm a stork, and then all Holland would be against us.
No.
It is better as it is. You will be coming, one by one, as years go on, to see the whole thing for yourselves. Holland is as wonderful today as it was when, more than 20 years ago, Hans and Gretel skated on the frozen Y. In fact, more wonderful, for every day increases the marvel of its not being washed away by the sea. Its cities have grown, and some of its peculiarities have been washed away by contact with other nations, but it is Holland still, and always will be full of oddity, courage and industry, the pluckiest little country on earth. I shall not tell you in this letter of its customs, its cities, its palaces, churches, picture galleries, and museums, for these are described in the story, except to say that they are here still, just the same, in this good year 1873, for I have seen them nearly all within a week. Today an American boy and I, seeing some children enter an old house in the business part of Amsterdam, followed them in, and what do you think we found? An old woman, here in the middle of summer, selling hot water and fire. She makes her living by it. All day long she sits tending her great fires of peat and keeping the shining copper tanks above them filled with water. The children who come and go carry away in a curious stone pail their kettle of boiling water and their blocks of burning peat. For these they give her a Dutch cent, which is worth less than half of one of ours. In this way persons who cannot afford to keep a fire burning in hot weather may yet have their cup of tea or coffee and bit of boiled fish and potato. After leaving the old firewoman, who nodded a pleasant goodbye to us, and willingly put our stivers in her great outside pocket, we drove through the streets enjoying the singular sights of a public washing day. Yes, in certain quarters of the city, away from the canals, the streets were lively with washerwomen hard at work. Hundreds of them in clumsy wooden shoes, with their tucked-up skirts, bare arms, and close-fitting caps, were bending over tall wooden tubs that reached as high as their waists, gossiping and rubbing and gossiping with perfect unconcern, in the public thoroughfare, and all washing with cold water instead of using hot, as we do. What a grand thing it would be for our old firewoman if boiling water were suddenly to become the fashion on these public washing days. And now goodbye.
Oh.
I must tell you one more thing. We found today in an Amsterdam bookstore the story of Hans Brinker told in Dutch. It is a queer-looking volume, beautifully printed, and with colored pictures, but filled with such astounding words that it really made me feel sorry for the little Hollanders who are to read them. Goodbye again. In the touching words of our Dutch translator, with whom I'm sure you'll heartily agree.
Toch ben ik mijn landgenoten dankbaar voor, die mijn arbeid steeds zo welwillend uitvangen en wier genegenheid ik voortdurend hoop te verdienen.
Yours affectionately, the author.
Contents.
Hans and Gretel Holland the Silver Skates. Hans and Gretel find a friend. Shadows in the home sunbeams. Hans has his way introducing Jacob Poot and his cousin the festival of St. Nicholas, what the boys saw and did in Amsterdam, big manias and little oddities on the way to Haarlem, a catastrophe. Hans homes Haarlem. The boys hear voices. The man with forehead's friends in need on the canal. Jacob Poot changes the plan. Meneer Kleef and his bill of fare. The Red Lion becomes dangerous before the court. The beleaguered cities lighten the palace in the wood. The merchant prince and the sister princess through the Hague. A day of rest. Homeward bound boys and girls. The crisis. Gretel and Hilda. The awakening. Bones and tongues. A new alarm. The father's return. The thousand guilders. Glimpses. Looking for work. The fairy godmother. The mysterious watch. A discovery. The race. Joy in the cottage. Mysterious disappearance of Thomas Higgs. Broad sunshine. Conclusion. Hans and Gretel. On a bright December morning long ago, two thinly clad children were kneeling upon the bank of a frozen canal in Holland. The sun had not yet appeared, but the gray sky was parted near the horizon, and its edges shone crimson with the coming day. Most of the good Hollanders were enjoying a placid morning nap. Even Meneer van Stoppelnose, that worthy old Dutchman, was still slumbering in beautiful repose. Now and then some peasant woman, poising a well-filled basket upon her head, came skimming over the glassy surface of the canal. Or a lusty boy, skating to his day's work in the town, cast a good-natured grimace toward the shivering pair as he flew along. Meanwhile, with many a vigorous puff and pull, the brother and sister, for such they were, seemed to be fastening something to their feet, not skates, certainly, but clumsy pieces of wood narrowed and smoothed at their lower edge, and pierced with holes, through which were threaded strings of rawhide. These queer-looking affairs had been made by the boy Hans. His mother was a poor peasant woman, too poor even to think of such a thing as buying skates for her little ones. Rough as these were, they had afforded the children many a happy hour upon the ice. And now, as with cold, red fingers our young Hollanders tugged at the strings, their solemn faces bending closely over their knees. No vision of impossible iron runners came to dull the satisfaction glowing within. In a moment the boy arose and, with a pompous swing of the arms and a careless "Come on, Gretel," glided easily across the canal.
Ah,
Hans, called his sister plaintively, this foot is not well yet. The strings hurt me on last market day, and now I cannot bear them tied in the same place. Tie them higher up, then, answered Hans, as without looking at her, he performed a wonderful cat's cradle step on the ice. How can I? The string is too short, giving vent to a good-natured Dutch whistle, the English of which was that girls were troublesome creatures. He steered toward her. You are foolish to wear such shoes, Gretel, when you have a stout leather pair. Your klompen * wooden shoes would be better than these.
Why, Hans.
Do you forget? The father threw my beautiful new shoes in the fire. Before I knew what he had done, they were all curled up in the midst of the burning peat. I can skate with these, but not with my wooden ones. Be careful now. Hans had taken a string from his pocket, humming a tune as he knelt beside her. He proceeded to fasten Gretel's skate with all the force of his strong young arm.
Oh, oh.
She cried in real pain. With an impatient jerk, Hans unwound the string. He would have cast it on the ground in true Big Brother style, had he not just then spied a tear trickling down his sister's cheek. I'll fix it, never fear, he said with sudden tenderness. But we must be quick. The mother will need us soon. Then he glanced inquiringly about him, first at the ground, next at some bare willow branches above his head, and finally at the sky, now gorgeous with streaks of blue, crimson, and gold. Finding nothing in any of these localities to meet his need, his eyes suddenly brightened as, with the air of a fellow who knew what he was about, he took off his cap and, removing the tattered lining, adjusted it in a smooth pad over the top of Gretel's worn-out shoe.
Now,
he cried triumphantly, at the same time arranging the strings as briskly as his benumbed fingers would allow. Can you bear some pulling? Gretel drew up her lips as if to say, "Hurt away," but made no further response. In another moment they were all laughing together, as hand in hand they flew along the canal, never thinking whether the ice would bear them or not, for in Holland ice is generally an all-winter affair. It settles itself upon the water in a determined kind of way, and so far from growing thin and uncertain every time the sun is a little severe upon it, it gathers its forces day by day and flashes defiance to every beam. Presently,
squeak, squeak,
sounded something beneath Hans' feet. Next his strokes grew shorter, ending oft-times with a jerk, and finally he lay sprawling upon the ice, kicking against the air with many a fantastic flourish. Ha!
ha!
Laughed Gretel. That was a fine tumble. But a tender heart was beating under her coarse blue jacket, and even as she laughed, she came, with a graceful sweep, close to her prostrate brother. Are you hurt, Hans?
Oh.
You are laughing. Catch me now. And she darted away, shivering no longer, but with cheeks all aglow and eyes sparkling with fun. Hans sprang to his feet and started in brisk pursuit, but it was no easy thing to catch Gretel. Before she had traveled very far, her skates, too, began to squeak. Believing that discretion was the better part of valor, she turned suddenly and skated into her pursuer's arms.
Ha! Ha!
I've caught you, cried Hans.
Ha! Ha!
I caught you, she retorted, struggling to free herself. Just then a clear, quick voice was heard calling. Hans! Gretel! It's the mother, said Hans, looking solemn in an instant. By this time the canal was gilded with sunlight. The pure morning air was very delightful, and skaters were gradually increasing in numbers. It was hard to obey the summons, but Gretel and Hans were good children. Without a thought of yielding to the temptation to linger, they pulled off their skates, leaving half the knot still tied. Hans, with his great square shoulders and bushy yellow hair, towered high above his blue-eyed little sister as they trudged homeward. He was 15 years old, and Gretel was only 12. He was a solid, hearty-looking boy, with honest eyes and a brow that seemed to bear a sign. Goodness, within, just as the little Dutch Sommerhuis * summer house wears a motto over its portal. Gretel was lithe and quick. Her eyes had a dancing light in them, and while you looked at her cheek the color paled and deepened just as it does upon a bed of pink and white blossoms when the wind is blowing. As soon as the children turned from the canal, they could see their parents' cottage. Their mother's tall form, arrayed in jacket and petticoat and close-fitting cap, stood, like a picture, in the crooked frame of the doorway. Had the cottage been a mile away, it would still have seemed near. In that flat country, every object stands out plainly in the distance, The chickens show as distinctly as the windmills.
Indeed.
Were it not for the dikes and the high banks of the canals, one could stand almost anywhere in Middle Holland without seeing a mound or a ridge between the eye and the jumping-off place. None had better cause to know the nature of these same dikes than Dame Brinker and the panting youngsters now running at her call. But before stating why, let me ask you to take a rocking chair trip with me to that far country where you may see, perhaps for the first time, some curious things that Hans and Gretel saw every day.
Holland.
Holland is one of the queerest countries under the sun. It should be called Oddland or Contraryland, for in nearly everything it is different from the other parts of the world. In the first place, a large portion of the country is lower than the level of the sea. Great dikes, or bulwarks, have been erected at a heavy cost of money and labor to keep the ocean where it belongs. On certain parts of the coast it sometimes leans with all its weight against the land, and it is as much as the poor country can do to stand the pressure. Sometimes the dikes give way or spring a leak, and the most disastrous results ensue. They are high and wide, and the tops of some of them are covered with buildings and trees. They have even fine public roads on them, from which horses may look down upon wayside cottages. Often the keels of floating ships are higher than the roofs of the dwellings. The stork clattering to her young on the house peak may feel that her nest is lifted far out of danger, but the croaking frog in neighboring bulrushes is nearer the stars than she. Water bugs dart backward and forward above the heads of the chimney swallows, and willow trees seem drooping with shame, because they cannot reach as high as the reeds nearby. Ditches, canals, ponds, rivers, and lakes are everywhere to be seen.
High,
but not dry. They shine in the sunlight, catching nearly all the bustle and the business, quite scorning the tame fields stretching damply beside them. One is tempted to ask, which is Holland, the shores or the water? The very verdure that should be confined to the land has made a mistake and settled upon the fish ponds. In fact, the entire country is a kind of saturated sponge, or, as the English poet, Butler,
called it,
a land that rides at anchor, and is moored, in which they do not live, but go aboard. Persons are born,
live, and die,
and even have their gardens on canal boats. Farmhouses, with roofs like great slouched hats pulled over their eyes, stand on wooden legs with a tucked-up sort of air, as if to say, we intend to keep dry if we can. Even the horses wear a wide stool on each hoof, as if to lift them out of the mire. In short, the landscape everywhere suggests a paradise for ducks. It is a glorious country in summer for barefoot girls and boys. Such wading, such mimic ship sailing, such rowing, fishing, and swimming. Only think of a chain of puddles where one can launch chip boats all day long and never make a return trip. But enough. A full recital would set all young America rushing in a body toward the Zuiderzee. Dutch cities seem at first sight to be a bewildering jungle of houses, bridges, churches, and ships, sprouting into masts, steeples, and trees. In some cities vessels are hitched like horses to their owners' doorposts and receive their freight from the upper windows. Mothers scream to Lodwick and Cassie not to swing on the garden gate for fear they may be drowned. Water roads are more frequent there than common roads and railways. Water fences in the form of lazy green ditches enclose pleasure ground, farm, and garden. Sometimes fine green hedges are seen, but wooden fences such as we have in America are rarely met with in Holland. As for stone fences, a Dutchman would lift his hands with astonishment at the very idea. There is no stone there, except for those great masses of rock that have been brought from other lands to strengthen and protect the coast. All the small stones or pebbles, if there ever were any, seem to be imprisoned in pavements or quite melted away. Boys with strong, quick arms may grow from pinafores to full beards without ever finding one to start the water rings or set the rabbits flying. The water roads are nothing less than canals intersecting the country in every direction. These are of all sizes, from the Great North Holland Ship Canal, which is the wonder of the world, to those which a boy can leap. Water omnibuses, called Treckschitten, * canal boats. Some of the first named are over 30 feet long. They look like green houses lodged on barges and are drawn by horses walking along the bank of the canal. The Treckschitten are divided into 2 compartments, first and second class, and when not too crowded, the passengers make themselves quite at home in them. The men smoke, the women knit or sew, while children play upon the small outer deck. Many of the canal boats have white, yellow, or chocolate-colored sails. This last color is caused by a tanning preparation which is put on to preserve them. Constantly ply up and down these roads for the conveyance of passengers. And water drays, called Packschitten, are used for carrying fuel and merchandise. Instead of green country lanes, green canals stretch from field to barn and from barn to garden. And the farms, or polders, as they are termed, are merely great lakes pumped dry. Some of the busiest streets are water, while many of the country roads are paved with brick. The city boats with their rounded sterns, gilded prows, and gaily painted sides are unlike any others under the sun, and a Dutch wagon, with its funny little crooked pole, is a perfect mystery of mysteries. One thing is clear, cries Master Brightside, the inhabitants need never be thirsty. But no, Oddland is true to itself still, notwithstanding the sea pushing to get in, and the lake struggling to get out, and the overflowing canals, rivers, and ditches. In many districts there is no water fit to swallow. Our poor Hollanders must go dry or drink wine and beer or send far into the inland to Utrecht and other favored localities for that precious fluid older than Adam, yet younger than the morning dew. Sometimes, indeed, the inhabitants can swallow a shower when they are provided with any means of catching it. But generally they are like the albatross-haunted sailors in Coleridge's famous poem, The Ancient Mariner. They see water, water, everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Great flapping windmills all over the country make it look as if flocks of huge sea birds were just settling upon it. Everywhere one sees the funniest trees, bobbed into fantastical shapes, with their trunks painted a dazzling white, yellow, or red. Horses are often yoked 3 abreast. Men, women, and children go clattering about in wooden shoes with loose heels. Peasant girls who cannot get beaux for love hire them for money to escort them to the kermis, fair, and husbands and wives lovingly harness themselves side by side on the bank of the canal and drag their packshits to market. Another peculiar feature of Holland is the dune, or sandhill. These are numerous along certain portions of the coast. Before they were sown with coarse reed grass and other plants. To hold them down, they used to send great storms of sand over the inland.